OTISS is Oklahoma's tiered intervention model for identifying and addressing academic and behavioral difficulties that interfere with student success. More simply stated, OTISS is Oklahoma's response to intervention model for academics and behavior. This alignment and organization of resources is a key aspect of the process. Often schools are not efficient in administering their resources. However, this is a byproduct of the development of our system and how most schools function. Schools are built on the foundation of general education. But not too long ago, we realized that our foundation was not adequate to address the needs of all children, so we built special education. Although this dichotomous system was designed to address student needs, it was obvious early on that not all students fit nicely into one or the other silo. So as a result, we built additional support systems like ELL, reading specialist, math specialist, and behavioral programs, all to try to fill the needs of our students. These supports were not intended to work together in any systematic way, and as a result, we attempted to address the complex needs of students with a disconnected shotgun approach to education. However, if you take a step back and look more broadly, you can see that all these individual programs are simply supports that can be brought to bear when students have needs. And if we align these supports, we can create a continuum designed to address the various needs of students. Our task then, as educators, is to identify the level of support on this continuum that results in adequate learning for all the students in need. This is a targeted educational support continuum. Now if we simply turn this continuum on its side and add the appropriate weight for each tier, we find we have a familiar figure. As you can see, OTISS is not another program or initiative or curriculum or anything else to add to good instruction. It is a framework for organizing good instructional practice. It is not a specific approach but a set of ideas. These ideas are that we can effectively teach all students. Intervention should come early. We should utilize a problem-solving approach within a multi-tiered model of decision-making. We should employ scientifically valid interventions whenever possible. Student progress should be monitored regularly. Assessment data drives all decisions, and we should provide instruction to students based upon what is necessary to produce the learning we desire. Tiered systems also attempt to prevent problems whenever possible and provide assessment and instructional activities that are designed to target both academic and behavioral concerns, as these are both important for success and can be assessed and intervened upon effectively in schools. OTISS cannot exist in isolation and must be integrated into everything we do. There are no islands in OTISS. To implement OTISS, you must have an administrator that is actively engaged, a team that meets on a regularly scheduled basis, preferably weekly or every other week, appropriate allocation of resources and staff, and a structure that is flexible and allows for all of this to happen. The core components of OTISS. There are 8 core components around which the OTISS framework functions. They are leadership, teaming, professional development, universal screening benchmarking, tiered levels of intervention, progress monitoring, decision making, and family engagement. Each of these components are essential for ensuring high levels of fidelity. The first component is leadership. Active leadership is essential in an effective OTISS model. Leaders ensure successful implementation, set the tone or climate for the school, and allocate school resources as needed. A passive leader allows for the implementation of OTISS but does not get involved. An active leader demonstrates high levels of engagement in the development, implementation, and evaluation of the OTISS framework. Active leadership is what makes OTISS important to everyone and is necessary for an effective model. The second component is teaming. Teams function to guide the process of OTISS implementation and make decisions regarding system-wide implementation and evaluation of outcomes. Teams are composed of a variety of school personnel and have representatives from general education, special education, administration, and specialty areas such as school counseling, school psychology, speech pathology, reading, and math. Other possible members are school custodians, bus drivers, parents, and at the secondary level, students. In addition, having regularly scheduled meetings is key to a successful team. Without regular meetings, the team is less likely to function effectively. For schools implementing OTISS, team meetings are a critical part of creating core curriculum improvements, designing interventions, and deciding which students will benefit from additional instruction. Decisions regarding the implementation of OTISS and interpretation of the outcomes of the framework should be made by the team and not by one individual. The third component is professional development. Continuous professional development is very important in ensuring that school-based personnel possess the skills necessary to implement the model effectively. There will always be a need to provide training to ensure current personnel understand the model and all components, and new personnel are brought up to speed on how the system functions at a particular site. Some areas of typical professional development need are effective instruction, design and delivery, principles of differentiation, reading and math core instruction, formative assessment and progress monitoring, parental engagement, school-wide behavior support, standard protocol interventions, data analysis and teaming, and universal screening. Professional development should be based on a thoroughly researched and well-designed plan for training. Professional development should not be haphazardly applied. So when evaluating site needs, start with the greatest area of need. Provide a variety of activities. Decide the number of hours necessary for goal attainment. Consider hours of training based on time of day or time of year, and offer all staff equal opportunity to participate in professional development. It is also important to follow up on PD and provide feedback when necessary to personnel. The fourth component is universal screening, benchmarking. Simply stated, screeners are designed to identify who needs help and in what areas is this help needed. Screeners can also assist in understanding typical performance at the site and the effectiveness of curricula. To accomplish this, all students must be screened multiple times per year. These screeners must be research-based, brief, easy to administer, and provide benchmarks for evaluation of performance. In addition, screeners must be completed with fidelity by trained personnel. They must be summarized in a database with graphic display. and analyzed soon after the data has been collected, and reviewed at the broadest levels first and then continued down all the way to individual student data. The third and arguably the most important component is tiered interventions. OTISS interventions are implemented for students who are having academic or behavioral challenges, strategies proven to work to remediate and prevent future challenges, provided at different levels based upon the student's needs, and intensified or reduced based upon the student's response. In the OTISS process, the interventions are provided at various levels of intensity or tiers. The first level of interventions is the least intensive and generally takes place in the general education classroom. If the child improves the skills with just a little extra support, no additional intervention is necessary. However, if the child does not progress as expected, then the child may need a more intensive level of intervention. The second level of intervention may include small group instruction or additional intervention. Finally, if the child still does not show the appropriate progress, a third level intensive one-on-one intervention may be required. A special education referral may take place at this point if appropriate progress is still not made. A key idea here is that results from these interventions are used to decide what happens next. The first and least intensive level of intervention is Tier 1 intervention. Tier 1 intervention is core instruction and is delivered to all students. This is standards-aligned instruction differentiated for all students. Interventions should include high-quality, effective instruction designed to engage and challenge students, clear and high expectations for learning and behavior, effective support to enhance student engagement, and periodic progress monitoring with benchmark assessments. The second level of intervention is Tier 2. This is described as strategic instruction and is provided to students not making progress with Tier 1 supports alone. This strategic instruction should include core instruction with supplemental small group instruction, standard protocol interventions. Specialists may also be utilized as needed, and a minimum of twice monthly progress monitoring. The third level of intervention is Tier 3. This is the most intensive level of intervention and is delivered to the few students for whom Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports were not effective. Tier 3 intensive instruction may include standard protocol interventions, supplemental instructional materials, small, intensive, flexible groups, tutoring provided by specialists, minimum of weekly progress monitoring, and instructional changes based on data. The sixth component of the OTISS framework is progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is assessment used to evaluate student progress or performance in the area in which they were identified by universal screeners as being at risk for failure. The team utilizes data from the progress monitoring process to determine if students are benefiting from the interventions being provided within the tiered system. Progress monitoring provides the information or data on student performance that the team uses to make informed decisions. When progress monitoring, the team will determine what areas to monitor, sets targets or goals for student performance, decides on interventions to use, decides on frequency of collecting progress monitoring data, and utilizes the progress monitoring data to determine if the student has met his or her goals, is progressing adequately, or needs a different intervention. The seventh component of OTISS is decision making. Educational decisions are made by the OTISS team based on intervention data and informed using rules decided upon by the team prior to the beginning of the process. In other words, decisions are based on data and not personal views. If there is inadequate data available to make decisions, then no decisions should be made. What data are necessary to make decisions? At a minimum, you will need to know the baseline performance or where the student started prior to intervention, performance under current conditions or the progress monitoring data, and the identified goal indicating where the student should be performing. In addition, the team must determine if the integrity of the intervention delivery is sufficiently high and if there is enough data to make a decision. If integrity is low, or all the necessary data are not present, decisions cannot occur. When you make decisions within the tiers, these decisions can result in providing the student with a more intensive intervention by moving to a more intensive tier, reducing the intensity of the intervention by moving to a less intensive tier, maintaining the current level of support by remaining at the current tier without changing anything or after changing something, and finally discontinuing support or stopping the intervention when the student reaches the identified goal. The final component is family engagement. With family engagement, schools reach out to families of their students in an attempt to meaningfully include them in supporting student learning. When families are engaged, students acquire literacy skills more rapidly, earn higher grades and test scores, enroll in higher level programs, tend to be promoted more and earn more credits, adapt better to school and attend more regularly, have better social skills and behavior at school, and graduate and go into higher education. When implementing the OTISS framework, you will likely come to understand that it is a dynamic and evolving process. That is why it is important to periodically evaluate the implementation of the model in order to maintain adequate levels of integrity. There are several reasons to evaluate implementation. First, as new personnel come on board, it is important to ensure that they have the knowledge and skills to implement the model. Second, with OTISS, as with all things, procedures drift over time. Evaluation can reduce procedural drift and keep us true to the model. Third, changing needs of our students may necessitate a shift in our resources or focus. As our students change, so must we. And finally, we must also evaluate the impact of changing resources, both financial and personnel, on the implementation of the model. When evaluating the model, you must first review several sources of data on a regular basis. Each source of data leads you to one or more aspects of implementation. Data indicating poor implementation must be responded to by providing feedback, additional training, and or support. For example, progress monitoring data that is flat may indicate a problem with the intervention process, possibly poor integrity or inappropriate intervention selection. Adequate examination will assist in identifying and responding to implementation needs. Key areas of evaluation are screening, benchmarking data, intervention fidelity data, progress monitoring data, data from tier movement, eligibility data, discipline and attendance data, and data from additional local assessments. The OTISS Fidelity Assessment is the tool designed to measure overall implementation of OTISS fidelity. The OTISS Fidelity Assessment is the tool designed to evaluate the degree to which a site is implementing the 8 core components as intended by the model developers. If you do not implement the model as intended, you cannot expect to achieve the maximum positive results. Results of conducting the fidelity assessment can identify what core components are being implemented well and what core components require additional evaluation and remediation. The OTISS Fidelity Assessment can be found on the OTISS website under OTISS Tools. The bottom line is, unless we monitor our implementation, we won't know how we are doing. Continuous evaluation is a necessary component of an effective OTISS model.